All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. And I made bacon and eggs for dinner, so tonight it's pineapple juice and coconut rum.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you are.
I don't know if it's going to show up for the audience, but I'm getting a message that the default speaker has changed, but and it says it, but it says it's the microphone, and I thought it was already the microphone. Is it better here?
No, that's too much. You're fine.
No,
Whatever it's
but
doing.
I'm saying I'm making sure that it's this microphone and not
Oh,
this
oh
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it did get more powerful here.
Okay, it was defaulting to your laptop.
It was going back and forth. I don't know what's going
Giggity. Well,
on.
welcome back home. Have fun.
Yes. So we're back. I just got back from England, the UK, and I don't know what Heath's been doing since I've been gone, but I've been kind of checked out from everything home. Mostly because we could only text there and couldn't call, and I could only use internet when I had Wi-Fi in the bed B&B we were in, and I didn't care to look at anything other than where we were going next or anything like that. So I actually wanted to just completely check out from the interwebs. So I had a lot of catching up to do today, which sucked because it was a very busy day work wise because I had a lot of catching up to do with that as well. You want me to rant about England first,
Oh
or
yeah, go ahead.
actually, to tell you the truth, it was one of the best vacations I've ever had. So ranting is going to be very limited to one topic. But Warwick Castle is awesome. If you ever go to
Yeah.
southern or mid UK, that's definitely a place I would recommend going to. Stonehenge is cooler than you'd think it was. Uh, we had it on the list just as you can't go around one of the seventh wonders without actually going there and saying you did,
Mm,
but it was actually a lot more interesting than I thought it would be. The Harry's Cliffs, which are the white cliffs on the seawall, those are pretty
mm.
cool. Oxford is awesome. That's a beautiful city, and you can go have a couple local beers from the oldest pub in Oxford, which is older than the United States of America. So
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Well, that's the cool thing about a lot of Europe, but especially places that didn't get hit by the war. Because, and you see that, I saw that a lot in Japan, especially because one of the reasons it is so modern looking is because so much of it was literally burnt to the ground. And Oxford wasn't really hit, and Oxford has made a point of keeping their city from becoming modern. You can look at pictures from as old as when picture photography first began of Oxford and look at it the same angle now, and it's the same. The
Mhm.
picture looks
I
exactly the same except one's in color.
I did see that on social media right before we went, and I
Mm-hmm.
tried to find that exact same spot in the street to take a picture, but I couldn't find that exact same spot. And what I should have done was saved the picture on my phone because I had no
Mm-hmm.
internet in Oxford to actually look at the picture again to try to find the exact spot. But I'm pretty sure we were on that street.
And there are areas like that all over England, which is great. But Oxford is pretty much the whole town. Edinburgh is also very similar. A whole lot of Edinburgh, which I haven't been able to go to yet. My parents have been.
We didn't because it was about 5 hours from where we were, and 5 hours there, 5 hours back would pretty much be a
Yeah.
all day to spend a couple. I kind of wanted to go because apparently the UK Comic Festival was in
Oh,
Edinburgh
cool.
that same weekend, so that would have been kind of cool to see. But the it was great there. The people there were great, uh, except for what I'm going to rant about. The people have something to do with this, but yeah, don't listen to the news. The Brits love Americans. We had no problems with anybody anywhere we went, and it was a great experience. People, places, everything, except for one thing. We rented a car, and the worst thing about the UK is driving in the UK. And it has nothing to do with driving on the left side of the road. That was actually easy to pick up.
The
Uh,
wrong side of the road, as I call it.
well, you're on the right side of the car, and you're driving on the left side of the road, so it's completely opposite of everything. And from what I understand about people who travel Europe from places like that, if you can be on the side of the car you normally are on, but just on the other side of the road, it's actually really, really easy.
Hmm.
But when you do both at once, it makes it really tough. And it was from a perspective standpoint, because it looked like the line of the road was coming right at you, but you looked in your mirror and it was over here. So every time you pass a car, it looked like you were going to get smashed. Uh, but that's not even it. The first turn we took out of the rental car place to go towards our destination, it says turn left on blah 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 street. We did, and it's a one lane street, and we're like, oh, a one-way road, okay. Except why are the cars all parked in the other direction? No, it's a one lane road that goes two directions. So you kind of weave in, and the car goes by, and you weave, and then they'll weave, and you go by, and it, yeah, you're going opposite directions. That was our introduction to British roadways, uh, and roundabouts were easy to pick up. But then the other part of it is you're on a country road. It's a tiny little narrow road to begin with, when they had all the room in the world to make a
Mhm.
regular size road. But not only did they have all the room in the world to make a regular size road, on the edge of the road, we have a shoulder here in the States. What do they have?
A ditch.
No, a curb. You see, this is the road, and this is the side where cars. It's going to come across opposite on the screen, but this is my right hand, and this is the left side. So you're driving on the left side of the road, and a nice little sharp curb is there. And
Well,
even on a little country road, who thought of this? They said, we're going to have this country road out here. Let's also build a curb,
all
not just
right.
leave the natural grass there or anything like that.
What happens when it rains, which it tends to do on occasion in Britain,
Well, not at the
and
moment.
then you're
It
driving
is
in a
a
river?
serious drought. It's a serious drought at the moment.
What happens when a tractor comes down the road with a wide load and you can't move over?
We had that experience a couple times, but that's the thing. There's no room for forgiveness. So like someone's kind of coming across on the other side, and you try to get over a little bit, you can't, because then you're just onto a curb, and if you're going 60 miles an hour, you're going to blow a tire. And
That's that's the downside um to keeping things old like they used to be, because you used to not have cars, and when you did, you didn't have a lot, right? And it's something that people don't get about America, even American cities, is the space we have
mm-hmm.
and what you can do with that. People talk about urban sprawl. Well, the reason urban areas in the United States sprawled out is because you could. So they
Well,
did.
we did Germany on the flight over. We were just kind of curious about it, and Germany and Texas are about the same size. It's space wise,
Uh-huh.
land wise. But Germany has three times the people in that same amount of space. There were like 90 million people, where Texas is about 30 million people. So three times the space, or three times the people in the same amount of space. Now, it made sense. You think of the UK. Okay, one of the things about America is everything's so new here, even the old stuff, right? When it comes to modern buildings. And so in the towns, you understand, because most of those houses were there before automobiles existed. So the roads were what they were. They just paved it. It was
Yeah.
people walking in horse carts, at best. And they just paved it and put a curb there, and made it modern, and then did the best they could with the cars. But the country roads is what blew me away. It was because not only is the curb that was bad enough, but then they decided we're going to build a hedge across every roadway to where you can't see anything but that, because they're windy roads, you can't see anything. So you're on this road where you're kind of right in the middle the whole time, but every 20 feet you're taking a blind curve you can't see around. So I mean, as I was talking to my son about, I was like, I could imagine the meeting at the road commission was like, let's build a curb. And then someone in the back said, we want the shrubbery. a very nice one. And so they just kind of put this thing right on the edge of the road. So not only are you trying not to get hit by the cars coming, but you're trying not to hit the curb. It's just very little forgiveness.
Mhm.
And that would be bad enough. But then they got the motorways, which are like our freeways, right? Our I-10, I-45, or whatever. Except they also have the curb instead of a shoulder. And some of them, some places had a shoulder, but it was not much. So if anything went wrong with anybody, the whole damn freeway was shut down,
Why would
which
you do that?
which we came across 3 times in our travels in one week, where they had to shut down the whole freeway. So we had to take an alternate route.
Well, that people wonder why the how the Autobahn works, and that's how it works is because they have big shoulders and they have lots of were very early adopters of electronic signage so that if there is a breakdown, 10 miles back,
Mm-hmm.
right? That, 10 miles ahead or kilometers that, car on the side of the road, move over, etc., whatever. So you can keep the traffic flowing at 180 miles an hour.
So that happened to us once where everybody just stopped in front of us, and we're boxed in by the curbs on both sides, and everybody in front of us and everybody behind us. And we look at the GPS, and it showed an accident ahead all of a sudden out of nowhere. And then we sat there and we sat there and we sat there and we sat there. And then finally, everybody kind of parts ways a little bit so the police and stuff can go through. But the police just stopped and road closed. The whole freaking freeway that connects one part of Britain to the other part of Britain, which is where we needed to go, was just closed because apparently there was a fender bender 10 miles up.
It's almost like they don't want you to drive.
Well, yeah, I think the heat had something to do with it because there were 2 of those 3 closures were vehicle fires where a car just exploded, basically. We got to see one of them. It was quite the fire. It was an old Volkswagen Beetle just blowing up black smoke, and the flames were about 20 feet high. It was, luckily we saw it looked like the owner sitting to the side and not in the car, so that was good. And he seemed unconcerned, so probably nobody else in the car, or he's a psychopath, one of the two. But at the same time, it was pretty impressive. Luckily, that was going the other way when we were heading to London. But yeah, the UK is awesome, except for driving. Driving sucks. I just don't understand the planning that went into that.
Yeah. Uh, Luckily, nothing happened here while you were gone. No
Oh
exciting
no!
news
Oh
whatsoever.
gosh. Okay, so
I was trying to unplug while you were gone because I was trying to kind of reset my brain. I was kind of, you know, agitated and off my meds and just trying to get readjusted and in a routine, and not paying attention to politics helps with that. So, I was just kind of watching my kind of entertainment oriented YouTube channels and history oriented YouTube channels, trying to stay away from politics. But sometimes news comes along that you cannot ignore because it's so big, it's everywhere. And I couldn't ignore it.
I don't know
And
where this is going to go because I was unplugged. I know what story he's talking about, but I
yeah.
didn't get to get too deep into it. So,
Well, I've got a bunch of tabs up here, and this is me calmed down because I was in Storm the Bastille mode when it happened. And if you've been paying attention to our non-Wheel of Time stuff, I'm not a Trump fan, and I really don't want him to run again.
which
Because
good news for that is in the latest polls, DeSantis is higher now.
yeah,
So there's good news. I mean, it's still mixed opinions on DeSantis myself, but it's not mixed that I approve of him over Trump.
yeah. Um, and I would certainly much prefer that. Um, because I think you have a better idea of you you know what you're getting with DeSantis because you've seen his track record. Trump is such a world-class bullshitter and has always been that that's one of the things that is appealing to his fan base. But it's also a problem that his fan base isn't recognizing. When you look at the last year of his presidency and all the COVID stuff that people complain about, that was him, guys. That's you got to take the good with the bad. And that was the bad. And it stems from his art of the
Ineptitude.
deal. Well, see, I don't.
No, no, I think I think he's proficient in what he does
Yes.
business wise, but I don't think he was proficient in understanding the nuances of his presidency. But and this is a good here's a good example. He did Operation Warp Speed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Operation Warp Speed is the root of everything that got in the way of all therapeutics and treatment options, etc. But then he backed treatment options, which made them political and therefore made them demonized because Trump said he liked them. And I have a feeling that was an ignorant moment where he didn't understand the fact that he pushed this thing through that needed an EUA, but that also needed this other thing he
Yeah.
liked to.
Why can't I sell golf courses and my casino and Trump stakes? And he's selling it all. And he didn't realize that no, this is a political issue and there are sides here. And the things that you are doing, as you say, warp speed, that has consequences. That and he should understand this a little better because real estate is the closest thing to a zero-sum game in a free market economy, in a even quasi-capitalistic economy. Politics has always been zero-sum. You can talk about compromise all you want, but in the end, you get a policy, you get a winner of an election, and that's that. Okay,
Yeah,
you
but
don't grow the pie.
I don't think he understood the butterfly effect of doing things.
That yeah,
Where in real estate you could see the profit lines, you can see the trends, you can see all of that. Where he didn't understand the fact that there were regulations around something he started that other things that seemed like a good sell at the time, which had a profit margin as far as we'll make political clout a profit, right? That had a profit margin were actually blocked by some of the other profits he was going for. Where in real estate, it's a little more cut and dry, unless you're trying to sell the same property twice. It's.
but I don't think he gets a pass on that because he
Oh
should
no,
have
no,
known.
I don't think he gets a pass. That's why he's not going to be a good president. That's exactly
Yeah.
why I wouldn't vote for him. That's
Um,
there's a difference between ignorance and malice, but at the same time, they're both negative.
at the same time, so I just brain farted on his name because I wasn't planning on going here and we've kind of meandered. But do you remember the name of the Stanford guy that was brought in to the scientific advisory team? Um, he was he was the contrary voice, uh, contrary to Fauci and Birx, and he was the one saying, "Guys, the data doesn't support this." You
What
know,
what uh what was the title?
I can't remember his name. He was a Stanford guy, MD, PhD, um, and he was brought in. Scott, I think is the last name. No, or Scott the first name. I don't know. The point is, he
Scott
last
Atlas.
Scott Atlas.
Okay.
Okay. I
Which
had
is a name to not be said
I
at
I
this point.
I had Scott Adams stuck in my head, and that's the Dilbert guy, I think. Anyway, so Scott Atlas wrote a book about his time in the White House, and from his account, Trump was barely present. Okay, he would come in, he would get a Cliff's Notes version, and then he would leave. And I think that was on purpose because that's part of his art of the deal, always winning kind of style. That no matter how things go, he needs to be able to sell and he needs to be able to protect his brand. So I don't know that he was necessarily interested in getting his hands dirty. And certainly from from his account of the people around Trump, especially Jared, what's his, but Kushner, his son-in-law, who was a major player in the White House, um, they didn't want to, as they put it, rock the boat with the election coming up. That's why Scott Atlas was shut down and nobody wanted to listen to him and his views. And it was very much reminiscent to me when I was listening to all this of what I've talked about before of everyone thinks that Bush lied, kids died, and there were no WMDs, despite the fact that in like 2011, 12, I want to say, the New York Times did this big expose on, oh, yeah, there were weapons of mass destruction. It just wasn't what we all thought it was. And here's the full story. And yet everyone still thinks there were no WMDs in Iraq. Why? Because the argument was lost, and uh, Bush's chief advisor said, the issue's lost. We're not going to fight it. And so they let the media dictate the terms. They let the media dictate the narrative. The facts be damned. And so if you're going to complain about the establishment, well, you need to go in with open eyes and look at what Trump did. All this has gone rather far afield. And I've mentioned this before too, which is I don't know why the left seems to be so scared of Trump. And that's a big part of what this is about. I didn't bring up the statute because there are good legal things out there. I don't know if Viva Barnes or any of the ones you listen to have covered this, or if you've listened to them at all yet, but they're part of the US statute, the US code that dictates the misuse and destruction of official documents bars you from ever holding any federal office again. And I'm convinced that's what this is about. That
Oh, there's no doubt.
They are trying to trump up a charge that they can use that even if there's no conviction, if they can just make it stick long enough to muddy the waters and maybe keep Trump off of the ballots of some states while things dive into the courts, that's what this is about. And I'm wondering how much of this is Trump derangement syndrome, of people are that scared of Trump, people think Trump is that bad, versus how much of this is Great Reset, World Economic Forum, elitist bastards making a point.
Well, I think it's more simple than that. I think it's the fact that the midterms are coming up and there's no policy issue that the left can win on right now.
And this is how you put Trump on the ballot.
This is how you keep in the headlines the word Trump. And then you get out your base because they're scared of that.
That's certainly an element. And if you, especially this late, this close to the election,
that's the whole point of how they dragged this January 6th thing. They could have had these hearings a year ago. Yeah. They've been holding prisoners without a speedy trial, which we have a right to, with no charges actually made, no convictions made for what, a year and a half now? Approximately January to January, yeah, to almost September. But that's the whole point. They all of a sudden these trials started happening right before the midterms because they need that word in the headlines. Trump, 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 insurrection, 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 threat to democracy, because it will bring out their base.
I do strongly suspect, though, there is a not insignificant element of this, though, that is more malicious and nefarious. It is the elitist powers that be saying to any, not just to Trump, but also consider what has happened to people around Trump that have been destroyed, sometimes legitimately, but often not, that they have used the justice system to go after political opponents. This is a message to any potential outsider to say, don't you dare come in here and rock the boat. Don't you dare come in here and try to destroy our system. that we use to maintain power and live lives of wealth or accrue obscene amounts of ill-gotten gains.
Well, there's another element to it, and this is one reason why they would be extremely scared of a re-election of Trump, a Trump 2.0. He came in threatening to drain the swamp,
Mm-hmm.
but then when he got in, he tried to play the system and play nice in some arenas. Not in all arenas. He still had his asshole attitude, but like a good example would be the appointing of judges, the Federalist judges that all ended up betraying him in the end. Yeah, this is they have to know that he part of his holding on to this, even though he's getting older and older and older and probably doesn't need the stress, is a revenge act. And they know his playing nice to drain the swamp the first time is not going to happen again. And he's going to come in and just blow crap up because he doesn't care. It's the last time he can even be president, anyways. And so he's going to come in and just light it up for good or for bad. And they have to know that. The three-letter agencies have to know that. The FBI, the CIA, the ATF, all of them. They all have to know he's going to come in and just blow the whole thing up. It maybe even disband these things. So there is an element of fear there because they know he's out for blood. He thought he could do it one way, and he was betrayed by the people he propped up in those positions. And there's one thing that we have to know about his character is he's going to go for revenge. I remember watching an interview with him from early 1990s, 92, 93. And it was right after he kind of rebuilt his business after the first crash where he lost billions, and then he built it back up after that. And one of the things he talked about was he learned from that. And this is in like 1992, 93. We knew what we were going to get if you really just paid attention to his career. And one of the things he said was revenge is absolutely vital. Because that's how I rebuilt everything. I needed to take revenge. When I tried to turn the other cheek, everything failed. And so this is his personality. If he gets back into office, he is going to destroy everybody who betrayed him in the first go round.
Yeah, there's and frankly that what my what all my tabs here are for is it's past time that it happened, because the apparatuses within DC, within the uh, law enforcement intelligence community, uh, are way past the point where we need to do something about them, or they become a threat to the civil society. And this pretense of going after Trump on a warrant that actual legal minds who know their stuff are saying this looks like a general warrant, which is unconstitutional, blatantly so. A warrant has to be very specific.
Yeah,
You cannot have
basically what you mean by general warrant is go in there and see what you find.
Exactly.
Not we think they have this and make sure they do or do not have this.
So it looks like a fishing expedition based on the pretense of the mishandling of classified documents. Now, you probably think I'm going to Hillary and her server, but I will remind you that I am a giant political nerd who has been paying attention to this stuff for way too long. Sandy Burglar, I mean Burger. Now, you probably don't remember that name because you had a life and you weren't paying attention. Sandy Burger was Clinton National Security Advisor, Kerry campaign manager, as it says here, will get a small fine and a slap on the wrist. He will pay $10,000 and get no jail time. His security clearance will be suspended until around the end of the Bush administration, meaningless for a career Democrat like Mr. Berger. And he was given the opportunity to voluntarily forfeit his law license. What did Sandy Berger do? Sandy Berger went into the National Archives, pulled out documents, stuffed them down his pants and into his socks, quite literally, and then went and destroyed the documents. These documents were about Clinton and his response to Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda. He was doing this ahead of the 9/11 Commission. He was trying to destroy evidence that put Clinton in a bad light. He got a slap on the wrist for destroying not just sensitive National Archive material, but material that was pertinent to an investigation that was happening at the time. Slap on the wrist. Nope, no real punishment. Hey, this is the Washington Post, which declares that democracy dies in darkness. That's why I'm using it.
It cracks me up because the New York Times is the left leaning. We're going to loosely use the word leaning. New York outlet, New York Post, is the right leaning, where the Washington Post is the left leaning, and the Washington Times is the right leaning.
Yep. Anyone remember the VA scandal in Obama? Nothing really ever came of it.
Yeah, I vaguely remember it. It was
all right. So to refresh your memory, it was even worse than what most people know because the full range of facts weren't reported. People should have gone to jail for this, and yet very few people were even fired for it. Where this came from is it was discovered that the VA in Phoenix was cooking its books, and then that snowballed into other VAs and the VA system as a whole. The reason they were doing it is because they got bonuses for having good books. So they were fudging their numbers and letting veterans get lost in the paperwork and ignoring their claims so that veterans literally died while they were waiting for treatment that was never going to happen so that bureaucrats could get bonuses. But Obama had to be protected. That was more important than people literally killing veterans so that they could get money. No one was punished. A few people, I think, were fired. And the Obama and the media said nothing to see here and then moved on. And even the Washington Post had to say, okay, well, actually, that's not true. And nothing really ever came of it. Same thing with the IRS scandal.
Oh, IRS.
Which this group, Judicial Watch, yes, they are a right-leaning group, but when they get FOIA documents, they post them so you can see what they're talking about. And here is.
Speaking of FOIA documents, while you're bringing that up, did you see the Alex Berenson victory in discovery for his Twitter case?
No.
In discovery, the documents came out that there was direct communication between Twitter and the Fed to censor his stuff, named specifically, his name specific.
So okay, Lerner, and those who directed or signed off on her activities, she was the head of the IRS scandal where the IRS was targeting Tea Party conservative groups. Of those, Tea Party groups have largely been allowed to skate away scot-free. Lerner was not, in the strictest sense of the word, fired. And this is U.S. news. This is not a right-leaning thing. She gets to keep her pension, hasn't spent a minute in jail, and as far as anyone knows, has not suffered a bit, despite the egregious abuse of authority in which she engaged. And I'll remind you that the Inflation Relief Act that they just passed is doubling the number of IRS agents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you think that's about auditing billionaires? You don't need 67,000 auditors to audit the couple hundred billionaires in this country.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming after people like myself who run a business and pretty much barely making it by and trying to figure out what you can deduct and what you can't.
The overwhelming majority of audits are on middle class people.
Mm-hmm.
Overwhelming majority.
And on self-employed people.
Yeah, self-employed, especially because the code is so convoluted, it's easy to mess up. And it's so convoluted that the IRS can pretty much make any claim, and you can make a credible case because the code is so convoluted that you can make a case for just about anything. And it is the one of the few places in America where the Constitution doesn't matter. You have no presumption of innocence, and the government doesn't have to prove its case. You have to prove to the government, to its satisfaction, that your taxes are all in order. It is the first place, and this should have been happening long ago, that we need nullification. If the IRS comes after you, you should demand a jury trial and tell that jury to nullify the state's case, to vote not guilty on the general principle that this arm of the government is rampantly abusing its power, and no one in the government is going to stop it, so it's up to the citizens.
So what I'm wondering is if they're going to try to make up for the, how many $billion was it, $80 billion that was spent to ramp it up?
Yeah.
Well, they got to make that money somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something like $80 billion and a doubling of the number of agents.
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking for? Are you looking for that? You want me to go back to my rantings?
Yeah, I had a meme for that, and I had to send it to myself so I could bring it up. Here we go. This might be our cover photo today.
Yeah.
Anybody remember what that photo's from?
No.
The IRS thing is obviously photoshopped on there, but isn't that the Elian Gonzalez?
Could be.
I think it was when they busted the door down and pulled him out. And you get the famous photo with the kid crying and the guy with the gun. And
yeah, that was good. Federal government and this in law enforcement. Speaking of, let's go back to the FBI specifically, since that's what got me on this rant. Hey, remember this thing that we talked about? This is ABC News. Again, I tried my best to not go to conservative websites to get these links. Watchdog, FBI mishandled NASA USA gymnastics abuse case. The FBI made fundamental errors in investigating sexual abuse allegations against former gymnasts. We've talked about this before, and several weeks ago, we shared the story about how no one was being punished. Now, in my looking to find a link talking about this, I found some stories saying that an agent, like the field agent who was kind of the point man here, who took some of these statements, he was fired. Supposedly, maybe. But there was no, they made fundamental errors, and there was no fundamental addressing of the bureaucracy, the system, the structure that allowed this to happen. And no one up the chain was punished. Again, going back to every link, this is what happens. You cannot ask the swamp to police itself. It's going to protect itself. And the left inherently understands this when they talk about the thin blue line and local police. And yet now, when it serves their interest, because they're going after a political enemies, the federal law enforcement is fine. Yeah, it can police itself. It's perfectly fine that its watchdogs watch themselves, and if they say there's nothing to see here, there's nothing to see here. I mean, like in the Whitmer case, there were some acquittals and hung juries, and it was more than just fishy. Is in one of these cases, they got the texts and communications to show that the FBI agents and informants were the ones who set this up, including establishing the group. And they went looking through Facebook and other social media posts to find people who had made statements that they thought made them um, sympathetic to this kind of extremism. This was entrapment 101. And as we pointed out a while back when we talked about this, over half of the group were agents or informants of the FBI. So they have time for this. And hey, remember this guy? The Buffalo shooting? What did the FBI know and when did they know it? Now I just picked this one as an example because remember, there have been numerous stories and allegations that the Orlando gay nightclub shooter, that guy, that he was on the FBI's radar, that the Vegas shooter was on the FBI's radar. How many of these mass shooters were on the FBI's radar and they dropped the ball and nothing ever came of it? Who dropped the ball and why? And were they punished? No one knows. No one cares.
Well,
Meanwhile,
tinfoil hat with the furthering of certain political positions based on those things that happened. If they had been stopped ahead of time, you wouldn't have that momentum. Sutherland Springs shooter.
Speaking of, I forgot about him. That
no, this is the one that I always think about when I think about these situations, because everything about that situation, there were so many things in place that should have stopped it.
Yes.
Because he was in a psychiatric institution. He was released. He was able to legally buy a gun after days after being released from a psychiatric institution.
And I believe while he still had a restraining order on him from the wife
in his past, which would have
felonies in his past.
Him.
Yeah. I remember now lots of people saying, wait a minute, by the laws on the books, he should not have passed his background check. By the laws on the books, buying this firearm was illegal, and yet he passed his background check. How?
And
I don't ever remember hearing an answer to that.
And he shouldn't have known the location of the people he went to shoot. So somehow he got that information. Somehow he got a gun. Somehow he was released just in time to do it. That's the one that puts my whole radar into wiggy mode. All the other ones, there's so much circumstantial about that, but that one right there, it just blows me away how many things had to happen for that situation to happen. And I hate coincidences. I always bring up one of my favorite books, Thinking in Bets, where you think of what's luck and what's your decisions. And this one just keeps bringing up my radar of decisions versus luck. And I could be wrong. I mean, I obviously don't make the best investment decisions, or else I'd be more rich. But my crypto's dead right now.
Meanwhile, so I guess I
need to turn on my light. It's getting dark here. By the way, in the UK at this moment, the sun comes up at like 4:30 in the morning. So have big curtains if you want to sleep.
So
All
I'm
right.
I'm trying to decide which of this I want to get into. I'll just go over it briefly. Um, I found this guy's Substack while looking at some COVID stuff, and then I found all of his stuff on guy who's flying with his dad on Air Force One to a vacation right now. Last I heard, Hunter Biden.
You are trying to get us banned. I see how it
Hmm.
is. Okay, so if you don't see a Wheel of Time for a while, it's because
My
we
fault.
strike two is a week suspension.
So now he has the link here to a group um, who's done a lot of research on Hunter's laptop, and as he says, you can look at Hunter's laptop on their website and verify this text message for yourself. But more than the text messages, okay, you can think, oh well, somebody faked that. They have the videos and pictures from his website of him smoking crack in a bathtub, of him smoking crack with prostitutes. Not prostitutes. That doesn't quite sum it up. He is having he videoed himself having conversations with high-end Russian call girls. Who do you think runs the organizations that sell out these high-end Russian call girls in Moscow?
The oligarchs.
Damn straight, because they're the crime bosses. So people want to have a conniption fit over, the supposed links with Trump in Russia, which we talked about months ago. And I went through the documentation of how it's all nonsense, and worse than nonsense, it's fabricated. And there's video of Hunter with Russian call girls, and no one wants to take a look at that. Meanwhile, the FBI will raid not just Rudy Giuliani's house, but they raided his law office, which is a blatant violation of the Constitution and of legal norms. If you are going to go after an attorney and break attorney-client privilege, you have to have very special reason and very solid evidence. And you have to be alleging that uh uh the attorney-client privilege is void because the attorney is engaged in illicit activity with the client.
Well, that's the
That's
same
how
as the raid on Project Veritas.
when they went looking for this diary of Biden's daughter. Is that what you're
And
talking about?
yeah, that one, yeah. And somehow the New York Times had, after that raid, gets a hold of all the attorney client communications between Veritas and his attorneys.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So
So
so the FBI is not only doing this in an unconstitutional manner, they're giving away the information to other news outlets and stuff.
meanwhile, you have a mountain of evidence, and Giuliani has said repeatedly when they came with their warrants to go through all of my stuff, including stuff they shouldn't have gone through. I said, "Hey, look, I'm not dumb. I was a U.S. attorney. I'm not committing crimes here. I'm not stupid. The only incriminating thing I have is that. What's that? That's Hunter's laptop. You want it? No, of course not. Why would you want that when all it shows is that the Bidens were getting rich by aligning their interests with Russia's Vladimir Putin and China's Xi Jinping? Why would you care that Hunter Biden was involved in a Russian deal to sell oil to China? So both at the same time, Russian oil to China, Biden gets tons of money. And, that's just well, that's just that stuff. Then there's the creepy stuff, like his sexually inappropriate relationship with his 14-year-old niece.
That I didn't know.
It, I don't know all the gory details, and I have not gone looking for them, but Giuliani classified it as child pornography. That there are pictures of her on Biden's laptop that he classified as child pornography. and nobody cares. So Giuliani was lambasted from both the left and the right, and it annoyed me when I went looking into it during the election fortification discussions. And this thought occurred to me when I watched him. I think it was before it wasn't before the Arizona state legislature. It was before a committee that had been called that I think only Republicans went to. And Giuliani went along with some other people to present their case and their evidence. And Giuliani was, as you remember him, reasoned, eloquent, legally sharp. Okay. This is the guy who brought down the mob. And if you want to know what New York City was like before Giuliani, go watch the good classic Law and Order episodes from the 1980s, the 1980s and the early 90s, and see what New York City was like before Giuliani came along, even before he was mayor. But when he came along as U.S. attorney and used the RICO statutes to take down the mob families. Um, I think it was a Netflix documentary on it about taking down the mob that was really good. That showed the intricacies of it and how dangerous it was and how tenuous it was to be able to get all of the five families down at once. This was also the guy that was the calming voice in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, as that's where he became America's mayor. That's where that moniker came from. And then after the 2020 election, the media, including a bunch on the right, wanted you to believe that this man, this same man, had somehow lost his ever loving mind and was spouting conspiracy theories and nonsense because he was Trump's lawyer.
Well, let me play a little bit of devil's advocate here. It's not much. It's just more of a slight skew from where you're going. He kind of did, but it's understandable because the Hunter Biden laptop stuff was very legit, right? We're seeing more and more and more of it as time goes on. Uh, and when you have something that solid and we talked about this with Peter McCullough, Dr. McCullough, where he had something so solid, but then he was made a cartoon from it that he almost went over the edge. Well, he kind of did go over the edge. And I think that exact same thing happened with Giuliani. Is he started jumping at shadows because he had this thing that he knew it was this solid thing he looked at, seen with his own eyes, and he was told, he was gaslit to the point that he was told it wasn't real. The American public was told it wasn't real, and nobody would listen.
Well, and to your point, it started before the laptop because during the first impeachment, that is when Giuliani became Trump's personal lawyer, and he looked into things in the Ukraine because of this. And he uncovered, that's where he started to unravel and where he started to call the Biden family a crime family and talk about money laundering. And I'll disagree with you slightly about the jumping at shadows, but I will agree that at least rhetorically, he certainly seemed to go off the deep end, and he didn't help himself with some of his more confrontational media appearances because he had to know that that wasn't going to go the way even biased media in the past has gone. Where yes, they're biased and yes, they're confrontational. They're trying to push a point, but they're not hysterical. And he had some media appearances where the news people were belligerent to the point of hysterical, and it caused him to snap back at them in ways that was not convincing.
Well, you're actually supporting my point here because let's look at two things. First of all, look at Trump supporters in general. Uh, how many conspiracy theories did they go down just because the other side said it wasn't true? Their evidence that it was true was the other side said it wasn't true. And he's a human too, right?
Hmm.
And he just saw something. He just had these instances where he knew the truth, but yet it was, again, we'll use the term gaslit. It was gaslit to the point where the world around him believed it wasn't true, even though he could see it. It was like looking at the sky and he's saying it's blue, but everybody else in the world was convinced to say it was green. You're going to eventually start either going crazy or thinking you're crazy. Now, the other side of it is, think of the people in the media or on the political opposition. One thing about the left where they have the advantage is they understand the psychological aspects of their tools better than the right. They're doing it on purpose. They were baiting him into that.
Because the right tends to be more analytical, and that's where they're looking at the facts and figures, and so they come at it from a disadvantage per height. That's where he and his research and his discussions on the topic are so useful. Is the right needs to understand its deficiencies, needs to understand its intellectual biases so that it can articulate better. And anyone who actually gives a damn about honest dialogue, obviously not the people in power, but normal people who give a damn about honest dialogue, need to understand the things that Haidt are talking about. So, okay, this person isn't a bad person, despite all of the hysteria I see on my news feeds because of my political biases, and so I only see this side or that side. Okay, so this person who is my friend or neighbor or church member or family member or whatever, this is where they're coming from. You need to understand that so that you can discuss with each other.
I think it'd be useful here to put in where the term gaslit came from.
I don't even know. I started hearing it, and when
Okay,
I first
so
started hearing it, I said, "What the hell is that?"
it's an old story, and I'll have to look up the author in the book. But so the point of the story is the uh, one of the characters. There's two characters. One is the, I think it was the wife and the husband, and the husband was manipulative, and he was trying to. So what he would do, and this is back in the day when they used lamps, the gas powered lamps, and what he did was slightly turn down the lamp a little bit every day. And when the wife would say, "Is it getting darker in here?" he would sit there with his book or whatever he was doing and be like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." But he would purposefully make it darker every day. And eventually she started questioning reality because she kept thinking it was getting darker, but the feedback she was getting was, no, it's everything's normal. Everything's normal. So it's a method for basically making someone feel like they're crazy so that the truth they seemingly think is true from what they can see, what they can perceive around them, is not what's actually true. So then you can go along and start doing other things where it's like, no, I don't understand what you're talking about. Everything's normal. We're doing this. We've always done this.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure you're not, you know, are you getting enough sleep? Are you doing this? And so that person starts thinking they're crazy and they start going along with everything you want to do because obviously they know better, because I can't even tell that it's not getting darker
Mm-hmm.
in this room. So that's where the term comes from. It's a purposeful uh, delusion to make people feel like they're going crazy, so they do crazy things or go along with what you're doing. So this is, I think this is what happened to Giuliani, because this technique was used on him so much that he eventually started just going along with the actual stupid stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I wasn't going to go there, but now you make a good point of it. It really is rather textbook, and you can see how someone even of Giuliani's caliber would kind of lose his mind a little bit when you start to discover that literally the things you are being falsely accused of, the other side has done. If you look at, so Trump was being impeached because of the phone call he made, uh, saying, telling the Ukraine president to, I want help with this stuff, you know, supposedly, or you're not going to get this aid, and it wasn't that direct. 1944 film Gaslight. Okay. Oh wow, Ingrid Bergman. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
good for
So
him.
that's where the term comes from. But
All right. So Trump is being impeached for doing something in a phone call that Biden is literally on stage in video bragging about doing. About calling up the Ukraine president while he was vice president and saying, fire this prosecutor that we don't like, or you don't get the aid. And I have the power to do that, so do it. And he's I mean, that's kind of gaslighting. And then something I hadn't thought of before, but you remember the Trump P tape?
the, oh, the grab her by the
No, not P as in stands for kitty cat, but P as in PEE. As in, supposedly there was video of Trump engaged in water sports with Trump, the hypochondriac, or not hypochondriac, what's
the germaphobe.
germaphobe, is on film with Russian prostitutes engaged in water sports. It's idiotic and absurd on its face, and yet this was repeated in mainstream media, and a lot of people believed it, that Trump had these, and the Stormy Daniels stuff doesn't help because you can look at it and go, yeah, I can see how he would be hooking up with Russian prostitutes while he's in Moscow on business. Hunter Biden is literally on tape smoking crack with Russian prostitutes. So they completely fabricate this absurd thing about Trump while they are literally on film doing it, or actually doing worse. I would suggest that smoking crack is worse than tinkling on the bed.
Could go Amber Heard and poop on the side of the bed.
As I recall the origins of that story, supposedly he was like staying in the presidential suite and he hired prostitutes to pee on the bed because Obama had slept there, was what the story was. And it was completely fabricated.
That'd be funny.
It would be funny. I'd actually, yeah. So,
but that's not
last,
engaging in water sports. That's peeing on the
no,
bed. That's
yeah,
not peeing on him.
it grew from that into water sports. And as I was talking about it, I remembered the origins of it, which was a little more plausible. And then it just kind of ballooned as it was talked about. So the last thing I have, I'm not actually going to play it because it's 3 minutes long, but I wanted to show this because I've mentioned it before. So anyone who wants to go look at this, this is Michael Moore close to the 2016 election. And remember, nobody thought Trump was going to win. That there are credible reports that even people within Trump's camp didn't think that he was going to win, and they were already kind of shopping their resumes and setting up their "this is why we lost" stories. And Moore said, "No, I think he's going to win, and here's how. Here's why." Because in the Rust Belt, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and he was giving this talk in Ohio, in Wisconsin, there are all of these blue collar people that have been shit on and forgotten about and belittled and besmirched and stepped over and stepped on. And you have taken everything from them except for one thing. their right to vote. And so in November, they are going to raise a big middle finger to the establishment and say, that guy, not necessarily because we like him, but because you hate him. And that's like the first 3 minutes of that clip. And then he goes on, you'd see behind him, he's got all these pictures of Hillary because, Republicans bad. So then the next 3 minutes are how that, Trump's bad and you should vote for Hillary because you're not going to get what you want with Trump. And
which is which
somehow
is which is funny because it's Michael Moore, right?
Yep.
And he's so intelligent but so off at the same time because he had it exactly right with his analysis. But at the same time, he had the pictures of Hillary behind him. And the Clinton era marks the timestamp when the Democratic Party stopped being the party of the people and started being the party of the elites, at least openly. And
Mhm.
his reason for it happening was right, but he still supported Hillary, which was the reason why it's happening,
Yep.
or at least her family, anyways, her husband and then herself. No one, even more so than her husband, no one exemplifies elitism more than Hillary Clinton.
In large part because her greatest claim to fame, her greatest accomplishment was marrying a guy who eventually became president.
Mm-hmm.
She's an elitist just definitionally because she didn't accomplish anything except to have the last name Clinton, and that's how she got where she got. And I was just looking it up because I knew there was some overlap there, but NAFTA is one of the chief complaints of blue collar America for a long time, and Clinton had his fingerprints all over that. That wasn't just a Bush thing, and globalism and global trade and free trade started to balloon in the 90s in large part because of China, which again Clinton had his fingers all in. And so his wife is gonna address your concerns and your problems. Sure, Michael, sure. She's the champion of the blue collar
Yeah, she's talking about
downtrodden.
running again this time around too.
Bring it on.
No.
Bring it on.
Okay,
I'm
so
I personally I'm voting for sweet meteor of death.
uh, no, you want to know my what I think could possibly be the optimal result? Of course, it all hinges on 2022 as well. So 2022, we're expected to have what we call a red wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the House and the Senate probably will flip. So my optimal result is a respectable Democrat wins the White House because then you have a balance of power and things at least have 4 years to kind of self-regulate.
The problem is there's no such thing right now.
Mansion.
Well, there's no such thing right now because the Democratic Party is completely controlled by the radicals and the elitists. Look at what they've done to Manchin and Sinema.
Yeah, but his poll numbers are rising and rising and rising compared to Biden. And Harris isn't even on the radar.
No, but again, the Democrat machine is controlled by people who will not let him even close to. For crying out loud, it's going to be Bernie Sanders all over again, but worse. Because Sanders at least articulated a lot of similar policies to what they were pushing. They just didn't like they didn't like him as a candidate, and they didn't want to openly go as far as he was advocating. So they screwed him twice, despite the fact that he looked pretty good in the primaries.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think
Oh,
that
I would have
that's
loved to see in 2016 Sanders versus Trump. That would have been That would have been pretty legit.
That would have been interesting because there's actually a lot of overlap between the
Well, they're both
voters.
populist.
Yeah.
They just have a
Yeah.
different opinion on how it should be done.
So my I don't remember who said this, but there is a Republican that has said for some months now that when the Republicans win back the House, he's going to nominate Trump for Speaker because the Speaker doesn't have to be an elected member of the House.
Mm-hmm.
The Constitution simply says that the House chooses its Speaker, so it could be anyone. I would love to see that.
I don't know. I don't know. I just kind of I just wish that the shit he stirred up, which we're going through now,
Mhm.
plays its part because it is important, even though it sucks in the moment. It is important.
Yeah,
Uh, but at the same time, I think the part has been played,
yes.
and now it's time for that stirred up ant mound to be self-regulated.
He he was useful. I disagree with a lot of the people on the right who say that he was necessary because I think you could have gotten the same results with a Cruz or a Paul presidency
Paul,
instead of
yeah,
Trump.
yeah, Paul
Um,
definitely. Cruz, I don't know.
Cruz, maybe. I don't know how much of what we see now and lately of Cruz is the real Cruz and how much is him being morphed by DC. So it depends on if he was who I thought he was back in 14, 15, 16. But the point is there are others who I think could have done it without the downsides. But he was certainly useful and should be credited with demonstrating just how bad things in the federal government and in the media are.
Well,
Because
I think we could take a little lesson from this and a slight change to the system that wouldn't wouldn't disrupt too much, but it would actually bring a lot more honesty to the table. Is start lower the bar a little bit for third party candidates to be in the debates, because at least we would get a different perspective.
well, I don't know what's going to happen in 23, 24 anyway, because the Republicans pulled out of the debate commission because again, this is part of the light that Trump shined is they stopped even pretending to be neutral arbiters
Mm-hmm.
with Trump.
Oh,
So
there was framing in the questions, and the one I like to bring up was what was it the third debate where the the black news anchor was the lady, was the arbitration. I think it was the
uh,
third one,
in 2016 or 2020,
2020.
I don't remember
Well,
because I
if it was a second or third, it was either second or third because Chris Wallace was the first, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And she framed a question, and it was about the racial issue. And what she did was bring up a situation, a hypothetical situation. You know, black parent making a statement as if it's fact. Black parents have to have the talk with their kids about being pulled over, blah 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 blah. Gives this whole thing. That sets the question because then she asked the question, "What would you say to these parents?" And you, as the recipient of the question, have to either accept the statement or argue with the statement instead of answering the question.
Mhm.
And that's called framing. That's not that's a debate tactic. She was debating Trump, not Biden debating Trump, because Biden's just going to say his little speech or whatever. But Trump had to make the decision, which he wasn't savvy enough to do,
Yeah.
to either answer the question or debate the arbiter. And that was the clearest example of bias in that. Because if I were Trump, my answer would have been I would say to those parents, don't give that damn speech because you're scaring your kids and you're making it more likely something bad is going to happen. That's how these things work, and that's how anxiety works. And that would have finished it there. But he doesn't understand how anxiety works.
Mm.
He's a salesman and a politician. He's not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or even a neuroscience scientist. And that was the thing. She framed this, and it forced him into a position of coming up with a political answer or debating the debate moderator.
So I don't even know, the point being, the Republicans have finally realized that these blatantly biased presidential debate committees are more harm than help. So they withdrew, and so far as I know, there has not been any alternative offered. So far as I know,
I got the best
there
alternative after
there's
you
aren't
finish
going
your
to be
thing.
any debate. There aren't going to be any debates in 2024, so far as I can tell.
The two candidates go to Austin and get on Joe Rogan's show, sit there, just the two of them, no notes, no anything, and a 4 hour podcast interview where he moderates the thing, and there's no scripted answers, there's no nothing. You just he calls bullshit when there's bullshit, and everybody, and it's live, and maybe a little pot that might help too.
Mocha Bowl. All right, now talk.
Oh no, even better. Get both of the candidates to do a microdose of DMT, and then
Well, we should all drop acid and get in a sensory deprivation chamber.
hey, if we want honesty out of them, it'll work.
I was referencing a horrible movie that a mutual friend made me watch once.
What was that?
Altered States.
Altered States. I don't think I've
Yeah,
seen
it was like 70s or early 80s, and like they take acid and go into sensory deprivation chambers, and by the end of the movie, they literally transform into monsters, like werewolf kind of things, because reasons. I really was not paying attention because it's a very bad movie.
Oh, I did watch 4 movies on the plane. These probably are the first movies I've watched since the last time I was on an
Hmm.
overseas flight. But one of them was Uncharted, the Drake's Uncharted.
Hmm.
It was actually entertaining. Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg.
Like a in a kind of turn your brain off and eat popcorn kind of way.
No, it was actually, I would give it a
Okay.
B plus. It was pretty good, but part of it was the acting. Holland's good,
Hmm.
and Mark Wahlberg tends to be good. Uh, so this was the big surprise of it. When I got to the end, I was like, I'll watch the credits because I have a feeling, sneaky spidey sense, that this is going to have like cut scenes of future stuff, like teasers and stuff in it. So I was watching the credits, and to my surprise, can you make a guess what my surprise was? Watching the credits,
What? What?
showrunner and adapter was our boy Rafe,
Ha!
and it was completely not woke. The only thing I could say that would be woke about it was one of the antagonists in the show was a female, and she was pretty much indestructible in hand-to-hand combat. But other than that, the show was actually pretty much enjoyable and decently along the games.
I haven't played any of the games, so I didn't really care.
Oh, T's more of an expert. He's the one that
Yeah.
introduced me to him. But they're along the lines of Tomb Raider. Pretty good, light fun.
But instead of boobs, I understand there are quips.
Yeah, lots of quips. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a good show. And then I saw Rafe. I was like, no way he did this.
Hmm.
Why couldn't you do this with Wheel of Time?
That's painful.
Yeah, the wokeness of the movie was completely undisruptive of the actual story. He could have done that with the show. He could have taken the main. They did it with The Witcher, right? All the main things were there, and then the wokeness was on the side.
Yeah.
Last Kingdom was the same. You know, all the main things were there, and then there's just one castle that's super diverse. You know, it's
And you mostly notice the wokeness in, I noticed the wokeness in Witcher because I know what to look for because we talk about this crap all the time. But I really don't think you would notice if you aren't kind of steeped in this political talk because, as you say, it was on the side,
mm-hmm.
uh, which not so much with the Wheel of Time.
No, no. It's basically sitting on your face. It's
Yeah,
and giving you
yeah,
monkeypox.
yeah, yeah. You know, speaking of wokeness,
I
that
thought
could
you
be
were
a
going to say,
tease.
speaking of monkeypox, there has been a dog
I
identified as
Okay, okay. So now I have to talk about monkeypox.
well,
99
no,
point something percent of all documented cases are gay men. I'm sorry, we're not allowed to say that's not the technical term anymore. It's men who have sex with men. Gay.
so this is where I've got to actually go against your side of the aisle here because especially one of your boys, Crowder.
Uh-huh.
This is where they're going too far. They're calling it the gay disease. Well, I think his tweet was something to the extent of, "So when are we allowed to call monkeypox the gay disease?" And
Yeah.
it is completely uncalled for because this is a matter of situational spread,
Yeah.
and it has nothing to do with gay.
It
It,
it just so
it's
happens that that's the community. It's not actually a sexually transmitted disease like HIV is. It just so happens that was the spreader event was a gay festival, and so it has been spreading through the gay community.
well, and when we talk about men in particular, although we're not supposed to have differences between men and women,
Mm,
uh, gay men, homosexuality is more common in men. Bisexuality is more common in women. Okay, so we're seeing this thing spreading in one community, right?
yeah.
And the abrasions and things like that that happen in that act are the contributor to it because it's not just I touch skin to skin. There has to be some, well, just like with herpes, there has to be some rubbing in, we'll say,
So
of
there has to be a transfer of the appropriate kinds of fluids.
in specifically in skin abrasions because it
Right.
is
Which for sexually transmitted diseases are, you know, is blood and sexual fluids. If you're talking about something that creates pustules and sores, then you're talking about the pussy goo in there has to be transferred and penetrate.
okay. So we're looking at a situation where the first few people to get it were probably in that community,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll have to say because it comes from uh, primates that they probably were into other things as well. But but in that specific community, they're less likely to cross over. Whereas had it been a woman to begin with, there was a bigger chance that you would have a
Yeah.
crossover type situation.
Uh,
So
what made me jump up though was, wait a minute, because of how this spreads, not just in general, but how it's spreading, specifically how it's spreading right now. Nobody wants to investigate how this dog got it. Now that's just funny, but the more serious question is, no one does anyone want to more further investigate how these children get it? Because
oh,
maybe we should
that's the
take a look
big,
at that
yeah, that's the big one right there.
just to fricking make sure.
Yeah. Theoretically, you can get it through bodily fluids like sharing a drink or whatever, but it's pretty freaking uncommon because
Yes.
if you had like a busted lip and you took a drink after somebody, that could happen. But in a perfectly healthy situation, it's not likely to happen. Just like even a cold sore, if you take a drink after somebody, you're not necessarily going to get the cold sore unless you had some sort of abrasion of your own. So it's yeah, we should be looking into those situations. But at the same time, to call it the gay disease or whatever, no, that is
Well, it's also annoying.
stigmatizing.
I don't care about the stigmatizing. My problem with it is it's annoyingly inflammatory when the point should be. So I was actually just talking to the wife earlier while I was making dinner about this because she has a friend who is a a bigwig admin at a huge hospital complex in California, and so some friends in a group chat they were concerned about this. So I've been hearing a lot about this on the news. And do you have you been seeing these cases? And the admin lady said, no, not a single one. So the point should be, why is the media trying hyperventilating and trying to scare people rather than pointing out right now this is where the disease is in this community, this is how it spreads, so this is what you need to watch out for, and these are the activities you need to avoid,
Yeah,
instead of this is the next pandemic, everyone freak out.
look at who you're talking about
Yeah.
and who understand the mechanisms behind these things. This isn't assigning motive to specific people, but this is again, this is game theory. People are going to game the system, right? And the media knows exactly how to get what they want out of the conservative pundits, and Crowder fell right into it.
Mm-hmm.
If you create a situation where all of a sudden the gay, well, yeah, gay men were the new straight men, right? According to the LGBTQA plus circuit. So they were losing the gay men. Guess how we're going to get them back? We're going to get the conservatives fighting the gay men again. It's pretty simple. So let's go ahead and put this out there and make it pretty obvious where the answer lies, but at the same time, let's overlook it in the public eye so that these conservative pundits come out and start making these accusations that are very inflammatory. And now all of a sudden we get our base back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an easy strategy to follow if you just kind of take a step back, take a deep breath, and look at the big picture.
Mm-hmm. That's not even where I was going though. It derailed me with uh the freaking monkey fornication pox. Um, what I was trying to say is, as we wrap it up in a tease for next time, maybe, um, you brought up we're not supposed to talk about differences between men and women, and maybe we should take kind of a deep dive into that, the physiological differences between men and women, because you mentioned the indestructible chick in Uncharted, and it reminded me that earlier today I was watching uh, Sargon's video on Prey, the new Predator movie, and my thought on the movie, which I have no interest in seeing, is I don't know if you ever watched Predators, uh, the movie that came out. I want to say like 10 years ago,
Is
10,
that the
12
one
years
in
ago.
the Antarctic?
No, that was the first Alien versus Predator movie.
Okay.
Predators is they the Predators kidnap a bunch of mercs and soldiers and these kinds of people, a yakuza, a a uh, 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 Mexican drug cartel kind of guy. They kidnap them all and they drop them on this alien planet, and then they start hunting them. Okay, it was really good, and it was done by people who clearly liked the first movie and wanted to do it justice. The only real problem for that stupid movie is that they tried to convince me that Adrian freaking Brody was a buff, gruff mercenary. Adrian freaking Brody, who's doing like his best Christian Bale impression before this was, I think, before Batman even came out, but he's talking like Christian Bale as Batman, basically to try and convince you that he's tough. Prey's solution to fix that problem was to make a waifish 110-pound girl who looks like she's 16. I think the actress is like 25, but she looks like she's 16 and 110 pounds. Make her the hero that somehow kills the 7-foot alien monster. Sure, why not? I I will
Well,
at
it
least
depends on how she killed him.
I will at least give them credit that from what the clips I have seen and some of the people I've heard talking about it, they at least tried to be inventive. It's kind of how I've complained about if you look at the more recent Marvel movies and how the female characters fight versus the first appearance of Black Widow in Iron Man 2. And because she is a short, bosomy woman, she's not a big buff Gina Carano. She's not just punching people in the face in that really cool hallway scene with her and Jon Favreau. They were very clever in their choreography so that she's not taking them on directly like a man might. So I will at least give them credit that they didn't apparently do that. But it's still strange credulity that this chick who looks like a 16-year-old and talks like a Southern Cal girl, she's our hero that's going to defeat the giant monster. And the reason it's strange credulity, and the reason, frankly, it's problematic is because it is warping our sense of reality of the vast physiological differences between men and women.
Well, that actually segues into what I've got cooking up for what's coming up. So I've been, our kids are starting school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been looking into the source material for a lot of stuff, and one of the big things is the social emotional learning stuff, which the original template for that wasn't horrible. And I was talking to a teacher not that long ago, and my issue with the original social emotional learning was it's kind of a band-aid for not letting kids just free play, right? So yeah, it has good intentions and it has some good things about it, but it's trying to make up for something we've taken away from kids,
Mm-hmm.
especially boys. But where it's going is a different direction. And so now they're including social justice into social emotional learning. So I'm going through this explicit SEL instruction
Mm.
and listening to all their material as we speak, or not as we speak, but
I had heard about I want to say a year or maybe more ago that I don't remember who I heard say this, that pay attention if you see SEL, that's where CRT is being hidden now.
well, and that's the thing. It's not SEL itself in its original form.
Mm-hmm.
SEL in its original form had that intention to okay, so kids are doing all of these things, which they didn't have the foresight to, or it wouldn't be foresight, it would actually be hindsight, but to see that it's because we took away this thing from them of just
Yeah.
letting them interact with each other in a free range type thing without adults. We talked about this with the Japanese kids, where they send another student in to break up fights instead of the teacher coming in, things like that. So it's again, the analogy I told this teacher, and we kind of agreed that this was a great thing, a great analogy for it, was it would be like telling somebody all they had to eat was pasta, but then giving them an amino acid supplement and a multivitamin and saying you're getting everything you need. It just doesn't work that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you'll live, but you're not going to thrive the way you would
It's
with a
definitely
nice,
not
well-balanced
optimal.
diet. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a nice, well-balanced diet would do a lot better job with the kids. The free play, the interaction, the social skills they discover in that time would be more useful than this class to tell you how to be empathetic or whatever. It's just different. So, but what it also did though was create an opportunity. Back to game theory, it's a gameable system, and it is the perfect interjection point to put all of these other things in, because what are they all based on? Your perception of empathy, your perception of feelings, right? So if you teach kids to look at their feelings, well, guess what other message you can attach to that? It's about the impact of what you said, not the intent of what you said. Things
Mm,
like that we've seen along the way. Because how did that make you feel versus what did that person actually say?
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
All right. Well, we'll save that for next time. Next time we talk about serious stuff anyway. Next time we've got to get into the fires of heaven.
Yeah.
Uh,
Are we going to do that tomorrow?
yeah, we'll try and get to that tomorrow. But right now I need to go let my racist dog outside. That was him trying to climb up on me.
Okay. Well, I've got to pee anyways. So we
Okay.
did we give any medical advice? No.
Nope.
No medical advice. No
Don't
election
smoke.
fornification
Don't
advice.
smoke crack with Russian prostitutes. Is that medical advice?
Yeah, I would like to see our political debates done under psychedelics. That would be awesome. Not me taking them, but the candidates taking them.
Mm,
Oh, that does remind me. We do need to get into. I was asked to read a self-help book, and obviously from the first chapter, the psychedelics were involved. But I wanted to kind of do a review of it because there's difference between neuroscience and self-help, right?
mm,
And there's good things and bad things in my review of this. So we
all
could get
right.
into that. But it also kind of ties into the SEL stuff because it's the argument of different ways of knowing, and there are different ways of understanding, but there aren't different objective facts, right? So like I
Yeah.
can understand gravity is 9.8 times the, the acceleration due to gravity and the forces involved, or I can say gravity exists, right? So there's different ways of understanding, but there aren't different objective facts. So it's kind of the tie between those, and that I think that would fit with the SEL discussion as well. So,
Okay.
all
Well,
right,
we have that to look forward to next time, and we'll see y'all then.
all right, later, guys and gals, guys in the California sense, they them, right?
Zer.
Zer.